Let's continue with our examples. In number 1 and 2, we were using rules that were lines, just a linear line, and y equals mx plus b form. Now we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing, only our rule is actually going to be describing a parabola. But because this is a function, no matter what I plug in for my x value, I'm still only going to get one possible y value. So here we go. Our rule is x squared minus 2x plus 9, and I'm going to plug in a negative 4. And for x, let's see what happens as a y, or as my output. Now, just one note of caution, especially when we have squares and we're plugging in negatives, be careful. Negative 4 is what's being squared, so negative 4 times negative 4 is a positive 16. Also be careful of your negatives. You notice that a negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8. So if you make a mistake in function notation when evaluating, it's probably dealing with a negative. Go ahead and try h of 6. Now, you'll notice something interesting that happens. In both of these cases, the output was a 33. Here, I inputted a negative 4, out popped a 33. Here, I inputted a 6, out popped a 33. It is okay for functions to have the same output when you have a different input. So, for example, this is not the exact picture of this parabola, but it'll give us a good idea. Like, for example, if I plop in this value here, out it's going to pop this one here, and then if I pop in over here, it's going to pop out the same output. So input, output, input, output. I get the same output, but each come from a different input. That's totally okay. This will be a symmetrical graph. That's a parabola. So that's just something interesting to note. Go ahead, and this is going to be another parabola, 3x squared plus 7x minus 1. Go ahead and find j of negative 5 and j of 1. Now, sometimes, like in the examples previous, we actually had the rule for our input-output machine. We knew what the rule was. We picked a couple practice inputs and tried to figure out their outputs. Now, sometimes we won't have the rule. So in example number 5, we have a table of values. I know that there's some sort of rule because I'm putting in an x and putting in an input and out's coming my output, but I don't know what the rule is. But we can go ahead and at least use the rule, use this table to find the following. So this is saying find f of negative 7. Now remember, whenever you see an f of x or an f of negative 7, that's kind of like saying what is your output or what's your y value. So when I plug in a negative 7, what comes out as a result? So I take a look. When I plug in a negative 7, what comes out as a result? 4. So f of negative 7 is 4. I plugged in a negative 7, out came a 4. What happens when I plug in a 15? So I take a look. When x is 15, 15, out comes a 0. So f of 15 is 0. That's my output. F of 3, when I plug in a 3, out comes a 2. So f of 3 is 2. And when I plug in an f of negative 4, when I plug in negative 4, I get a, I don't see in my table -4 for an input. Now, this rule that I don't know what it is, it might be able to be possible to plug in a -4 and get a result, but from the information that I'm given, I can't figure it out. So my answer in this case would just be unknown. I don't have enough information to figure that out. Now, in this case, we're going backwards. They're saying, ooh, I know my output. My output is 5. What is my input? So again, we can use our table and we're just checking our output. So if f of x is 5, if my output is 5, what did I plug in? Here's 5, I plugged in a 4. X equals 4. With this case, if f of x is 2, so out came a 2. Oh, now take a look here. I actually have 2 cases where I got a 2 as an output. So I actually have 2 possibilities. What is x? X could equal 5, or x could equal 3. Because when I plugged in a 5, out came a 2. When I plugged in a 3, out came a 2. And remember, this is okay. This is still a function. When I plugged in a 5, out came a 2. When I plugged in a 3, out came a 2. It's okay to get the same output, but it's not okay to have the reverse. Like, for example, if I plugged in a 2 and out came 2 different outputs as a result, that would not be a function. But this is totally fine. Go ahead and figure out the next 2.